Imagine finally getting everything you ever wanted. The relationship, the recognition, the breakthrough, the love, the stability, the dream that kept you awake at night. And then, somehow, you ruin it. You lash out. You ghost the person who loves you. You delay the project until the spark dies. You say something you can't take back. You numb yourself with distractions. You convince yourself it was never what you wanted to begin with. You call it bad luck, self-sabotage, a fluke. But part of you knows you did this. You lit the match. You watched it burn, and then you stood in the ruins, pretending to be surprised. Why? Why do we destroy what we claim to desire? Why does love feel suffocating when it finally arrives? Why does success feel like pressure instead of joy? Why does peace feel foreign and chaos feel like home? What is this silent self-inflicted collapse we keep walking into again and again? And worse, why does it feel so familiar? The tragedy isn't that we can't get what we want. It's that once we do, we feel unworthy of it. We are not destroyed by failure. We are destroyed by the weight of receiving. Because deep down, there's a part of you that whispers, "You don't deserve this." They'll find out who you really are. If you get too close, it will hurt more when it's gone. Better to ruin it yourself than wait for it to be taken. And so, you sabotage. Not out of malice, but out of memory. Because once upon a time, you didn't get what you needed. You were abandoned, or shamed, or made to feel invisible when you reached for love, or support, or safety. And that pain left a mark, a template, a subconscious blueprint that says, getting what you want leads to pain. It's safer to stay hungry than to be fed and lose it. We don't sabotage because we're weak. We sabotage because we're wounded, because we are terrified of joy we haven't yet learned to hold. Because receiving requires trust, and trust once destroyed is hard to rebuild. Because fulfillment threatens the identity we've spent years constructing: the struggler, the underdog, the misunderstood. Desire is not just about longing, it's about risk. To want something truly is to risk not having it, and to finally receive it is to risk discovering that it still doesn't heal the wound. So we dance this haunting dance, wanting, pushing, achieving, then doubting, deflecting, destroying, and round we go. But what if the problem isn't your willpower? What if the problem is your self-perception? What if you're not addicted to failure, but conditioned to it? And what if every act of sabotage is not a mistake, but a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself you've exiled, the one who feels unworthy, the one who fears closeness, the one who associates desire with danger? Because here's the cruel paradox: what we want most is often the thing that most threatens our identity. If I get it, who am I then? If I'm no longer broken, what do I do with my life? If I'm truly loved, what if I lose them? These are not logical fears. They're emotional echoes, and they don't go away by force. They go away by facing them. So that's where we're going. Into the roots. Into the shadow. Into the quiet corners of the psyche, where sabotage doesn't look like rebellion, it looks like protection. We'll trace the hidden origins, reveal the psychological mechanisms, explore the deep, subconscious loyalties that keep us stuck, and then when the time is right, we'll talk about how to stop. Not by pushing harder, but by rewriting the inner contract that says you must suffer to be safe, because you don't. You never did. You were taught how to want, but you were also taught how to fear what you want. Not through words, but through experience, as a child. When you reached out with open hands, what did the world give you? Affection or absence? Validation or shame? Security or silence? Every unmet need, every dismissed emotion, every moment of confusion when your inner world wasn't mirrored by the outer one, those weren't just childhood pains. They were blueprints. You learned not just what to desire, but how dangerous desiring can be. Let's look at the psychology. Sabotage is rarely random. It's protective. Your unconscious doesn't care about your goals. It only cares about survival, and survival isn't measured by success or happiness. It's measured by familiarity. Whatever you experienced most in childhood, whether it was neglect, rejection, volatility, or conditional love, that became your baseline, even if it hurt. Because pain that's familiar feels safer than peace that's not. And so, your nervous system developed a logic of its own. Love leads to abandonment. Then keep people at arm's length. Success leads to pressure or envy. Then keep yourself small. Visibility leads to criticism. Then don't be fully seen. It's not failure. It's strategy. The strategy of a younger you who had to trade authenticity for acceptance. A child who had to earn their place. Who couldn't afford to want too much, ask too loudly, or shine too brightly. And that child never left. They simply grew up into a body that still tries to protect them. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Self-sabotage is that unconscious inaction. It looks like procrastination, or emotional withdrawal, or sudden rage, or picking partners who can't love you. But beneath every pattern is a belief, and beneath every belief is a memory. Memories, not always in words, but in the body. A stomach ache before joy. Tightness in the chest when someone gets too close. A voice in your head that whispers, "This won't last." Don't trust it. You think you're afraid of failure. But often, you're afraid of being fully seen succeeding. Because what if success means exposure? What if love means dependence? What if peace means finally relaxing? And then everything falls apart. The real fear isn't getting what you want. It's what you'll feel when you do. Let's turn to philosophy. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that humans fear freedom not because it restricts us, but because it confronts us with responsibility. He called it the vertigo of possibility. When you finally stand in front of what you desire, truly desire, you're not just facing opportunity. You're facing the death of every excuse you've ever made for not becoming who you really are. Success threatens your self-image. Love threatens your independence. Joy threatens the identity you built through struggle. Who are you if you're no longer proving your worth? Who are you without the story that you're broken? We say we want to heal, but healing requires grieving the self we were when we weren't whole, and grief is terrifying. It means letting go of the only identity we've known. Here's where things get more subtle. Self-sabotage often looks like loyalty. Loyalty to the version of yourself that never got the chance. Loyalty to a parent who never pursued their dreams. Loyalty to a culture that told you it's safer to be humble than bold. So you dim your light, you hesitate, you wait until the timing is right, which it never is. Because part of you believes, if I succeed, I abandon them. If I'm happy, I'm selfish. If I win, someone else has to lose. This isn't logic. It's emotional truth. And emotional truths don't go away with affirmations. They go away when you interrogate them, challenge them, grieve them. Because until you do, you will always live under the rules of a past you never consented to. Sabotage is also identity maintenance. We build our entire sense of self around our struggles. The underdog, the fighter, the perfectionist, the misunderstood genius. But what happens when those struggles end? Who are you when the fight is over? That's the terror no one talks about, because even suffering provides structure. It gives you a reason, a story, a place in the world. So, when the suffering ends, you're free. But you're also unmoored, and freedom without identity can feel like floating in space with no gravity. So we choose the familiar anchor, even if it drowns us. This is the core paradox of self-sabotage. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of what success will ask of you: to show up, to stay open, to feel joy without flinching, to hold intimacy without fleeing, to allow love without controlling it, to let good things be good without manufacturing catastrophe, just to feel normal again. Sabotage becomes a ritual, A way of reaffirming the identity we've always known. A way of whispering to ourselves, "See, I was right to be afraid." But now, you've seen the pattern. You've spoken the hidden script, and that is power. Because sabotage thrives in shadow. But once you shine a light on it, it has nowhere to hide. The next step is not more discipline. It's curiosity to ask, who am I without my struggle? What if I am actually safe now? What if the love I fear is the love I need most? You don't need to fight your sabotage. You need to understand it. Because, at its core, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists. Self-sabotage wears many masks. It doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes, it looks like comfort. Like playing it safe. Like just being realistic. Like starting projects you never finish. Like dating people who feel familiar, but never quite right. It looks like overthinking until the moment passes. Like apologizing for your needs before you even voice them. Like convincing yourself the thing you truly want is probably not meant for you. And the most dangerous part, you don't realize you're doing it. Because sabotage doesn't scream, it whispers. You think you're being cautious, but you're abandoning yourself. You think you're being rational, but you're rejecting your deepest truth. You think you're surviving, but you're slowly shrinking. Because that's what self-sabotage does over time. It shrinks you. It makes your world smaller. One missed opportunity at a time. One silenced impulse. One ghosted moment of connection. One dream quietly archived in the name of later. And eventually, you don't even remember what you really wanted. You just remember the version of you that wanted it. And now that version feels like a stranger. Neurologically, this makes sense. Your brain is designed to keep you alive, not fulfilled. It prioritizes certainty over possibility, familiarity over growth, predictable discomfort over unpredictable joy. The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, might say, "This is good for us." But your amygdala, the fear center, says, "Is it safe though?" And if your early life taught you that joy is fleeting, that love is conditional, that good things come with consequences, then your brain will light up like a fire alarm every time life starts to feel too good. And that's when the sabotage kicks in, not because you're weak, but because your body thinks it's protecting you from harm. But the real harm, it's the slow erosion of your own self-trust. Each time you betray what you want, even a little, your system keeps score. You stop believing yourself when you say, "This time I'll follow through." You stop trusting your gut when it tells you to leap. You start doubting your worth, not because you're unworthy, but because your dreams keep dying in your own hands. This inner dissonance spreads. You start avoiding mirrors, not the literal ones, but the emotional ones. Conversations that require honesty. Opportunities that demand visibility. People who reflect back your potential. Why? Because facing what you could be requires grieving what you've settled for. And grief is brutal. It's easier to stay numb, so you scroll, you stay busy, you intellectualize. You manage your life like a spreadsheet, with no room left for chaos, magic, or real emotion. But inside, you're aching not just for achievement, for authenticity. And then it starts to leak into your relationships, because how you treat your desires is how you treat other people's love. You begin to sabotage connection, the way you sabotage success. You test people without realizing it. You withdraw when things get too intimate. You attract emotionally unavailable partners so you never have to be fully seen. You confuse unpredictability with chemistry and call chaos passion. You reenact your childhood pain with adult bodies, not because you want to suffer, but because you've mistaken it for home. This is how sabotage becomes generational. You pass down the same beliefs you inherited. That dreams are dangerous. That love is earned. That safety requires self-denial. That thriving is suspicious, even selfish. You tell yourself you're protecting others from your mess. But really, you're protecting yourself from their closeness. Because closeness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is where the wound lives, culturally. This pattern is amplified. We live in a world that glorifies the grind, but doesn't know what to do with genuine fulfillment. We applaud those who rise from the ashes, but we don't trust people who stay in the light. You've been trained to chase, to struggle, to prove yourself. But once you arrive, once you touch peace, there's no script for that. So you script your own fall, because at least you know how to rise again. But here's the problem. You weren't meant to be in a constant loop of falling and rising. You are meant to build something once you arrive. A life, a love, a rhythm that doesn't burn you out just to feel alive. But that requires letting go of the identity you've built around struggle, and that's the secret no one talks about. Self-sabotage isn't about destruction. It's about preservation, preserving the identity that says, I am the one who survives. I am the one who's always trying. I am the one who suffers with dignity. Because when you let that go, you're left with something terrifying. The possibility of joy, and joy true. Joy is wildly uncharted territory for those of us raised on uncertainty. It's vulnerable. It's soft. It's not guaranteed. But it's also where life begins. So what are you left with? A life that looks functional on the outside, but feels haunted on the inside. A story filled with almosts, maybes, and not yets. An identity that feels safer than joy, but colder than connection. And now, you're tired. Tired of being the one holding the needle and the thread, stitching yourself back together after every self-inflicted wound. Tired of repeating patterns and calling them personality. Tired of fearing the very things you were born to receive. You're ready for something else, something terrifying, something holy, wholeness, the kind that doesn't depend on sabotage for safety, the kind that says, I am allowed to want, and not destroy myself for it. You won't break free by pushing harder. That's how you got trapped in the first place, believing you could out-discipline your wounds. That if you just tried harder, focused more, micromanaged every part of yourself, you'd finally stop sabotaging. But sabotage doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to permission. You're not here to wage war on yourself. You're here to unlearn the belief that war is necessary. This is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about remembering you were never broken in the first place. That the rebellion begins with a whisper, a single subversive thought. What if I'm not the problem? What if the self-sabotage isn't evidence of weakness, but a brilliant form of self-protection? What if the very behaviors you've been trying to fix are actually clues? Clues pointing toward the places where your safety was once compromised, where your innocence was replaced with strategy, where desire became dangerous, and intimacy became a risk. If you want to stop sabotaging, you don't need to discipline yourself. You need to reparent yourself. You need to show your system, slowly and gently, it is now safe to want. It is now safe to receive. It is now safe to thrive. Here's what that looks like. You start by noticing your thresholds, the invisible emotional lines you cross when good things start to feel too good. That moment in a relationship, when it's getting too close and you suddenly feel smothered. That second your project is going well and you mysteriously lose interest. That rush of joy, followed immediately by anxiety, guilt, or dread. These are not failures. They are flare signals. They mark the limits of what your system has been taught to tolerate. And that's where the rebellion begins, not by powering through, but by expanding those thresholds slowly, lovingly, consciously. Next comes emotional fluency. Sabotage thrives in silence, in avoidance, in the refusal to sit with what you feel, so you start naming your states. You begin to track what's underneath the behaviors. Instead of asking, why do I always ruin things? You ask, what emotion am I trying not to feel right now? Fear, unworthiness, grief. You sit with it. You stay. Because if you can stay with the emotion, you don't need to flee into sabotage. Your nervous system learns that it doesn't need to burn things down just to feel safe. That's the real revolution. You also need to question the contracts you've made with yourself, the unconscious vows that sound like, if I'm too happy, something bad will happen. If I let someone love me, I'll lose myself. If I succeed, people will resent me. If I rest, I'll become irrelevant. These beliefs don't disappear by force. They unravel through curiosity. You sit with each one and ask, whose voice is this? Where did I learn this? What was I trying to survive when I made this vow? Then, slowly, you write a new contract, not a fantasy, not a mantra, but a new, embodied agreement that sounds like, it's okay to enjoy this and still be safe. It's possible to be loved without losing myself. I don't have to suffer to be worthy. And then, you practice receiving, not just love, not just praise, everything. You let yourself receive compliments without deflecting, rest without guilt, pleasure without apology, joy without sabotage. It's awkward at first. Your body resists. You want to make a joke, change the subject, get busy again, stay anyway, because receiving is a skill. And if you weren't taught how to do it safely, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now. This is the healing work that doesn't look glamorous, but it rewires everything. Finally, you make peace with the part of you that still wants to sabotage, not by banishing it, but by befriending it. You speak to it like a scared child. I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're afraid this will hurt. I know safety used to mean pushing things away before they could leave. You don't shame it. You don't fight it. You listen, and then you lead. You become the version of yourself that no longer needs to destroy joy just to feel in control. This is the rebellion, not in loud declarations, but in quiet moments of self-trust. When you catch yourself about to ruin something, good and choose, instead, to stay. When you feel the urge to run and choose, instead, to breathe. When you start believing the old story and choose, instead, to write a new one. One where you are not the self-saboteur, not the one who almost had it, but the one who let it in, the one who survived, and then thrived, the one who stopped flinching every time life got beautiful, because it will, and now, you're learning how to hold that beauty without breaking. There comes a moment, quietly, and without ceremony, when you realize, the thing you've been fighting all your life is not failure, it's deserving. Not perfection, not greatness, just the terrifying truth that you are allowed to receive without earning, performing, or suffering first. And that's the final act of rebellion. The ultimate truth. You were never sabotaging your life. You were sabotaging the idea that you were allowed to live it fully. Imagine standing at the doorway of everything you've ever wanted. Love that doesn't require masks. Success that doesn't demand burnout. Joy that isn't followed by punishment. And imagine this voice, ancient and trembling, rising from within you. Am I allowed to have this? That question is the cage, and the truth, the one that sets you free. This yes. You are. You always were. You've built your identity around the chase, around striving, proving, achieving, because chasing gives you purpose. It tells you where to go next, but what happens when you finally catch the thing you've been running after? Who are you if you're not struggling anymore? That's the real terror. Not having but holding, because holding requires belief. Belief in your own worth. Belief that peace is not a trap. That joy won't vanish the moment you touch it. That love can stay even when you stop performing. But that belief can't come from outside. No success, partner, award, or follower count will install it in you. It has to rise from the deepest place in your being, a voice softer than fear, a knowing more ancient than the wound, the voice that says, you are already whole. In the language of trauma, we talk about hypervigilance, the nervous system's inability to relax. Born from a past that taught you danger lives in stillness, and yet, The healing you seek isn't in doing more, it's in stopping the cycle of proving. Stopping the punishment reflex when something goes well. Stopping the endless loop of almost enough. Because the truth is, you are allowed to just be. To enjoy, to rest, to show up without earning your place in the room. That's the truth. That threatens every wound you carry. You don't need to suffer to be safe. You don't need to struggle to be seen. You don't need to sabotage in order to stay in control. And here's what no one tells you. Healing won't feel like a lightning strike. It will feel like quiet permission to pause in the middle of a joyful moment and stay, to let the good linger longer than your trauma wants it to not flinch when you are chosen, loved, trusted. It will feel wrong at first, fake, vulnerable, unsafe, but that's not intuition. That's just the old system dissolving. Let it dissolve. Let the old version of youth, one who only knew how to hustle for scraps, flay down the armor. Let the part of you that only felt alive when on the brink of collapse finally exhale. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." But how can you become who you are when the story you've lived in is one of self-denial? You don't become by achieving. You become by remembering. Remembering the version of you that existed before the world taught you to betray your needs, before fear disguised itself as logic, before love became a test you thought you'd always fail. That version of you never wanted to sabotage. They just wanted to feel safe. And now you can make them safe. This is your truth. You are allowed to have what you want most, not because you earned it, not because you fixed yourself, but because you exist. That's it. That's the whole, sacred, terrifying truth. And when you accept that, you stop running, you stop breaking, you stop shrinking, because you realize there's no test, no final boss, no cosmic judge waiting to approve your joy. Just you, and your willingness to receive it. So here you are, at the end of the war, at the edge of the old identity, at the beginning of something softer, scarier, and more alive. And now, you have a choice. You can continue the pattern. You can sabotage the next opportunity. You can convince yourself you're not ready. Or, you can pause. You can breathe. You can say to yourself, I will no longer abandon the part of me that wants to be whole. I will not fear the joy I once pushed away. I will stay, even when it feels unfamiliar, especially then, because you're not the struggler, not the failure, not the storm. You are the sky it moves through, and the sky does not collapse, it holds. It expands, and now so can you. You are free. You always were. You just needed to remember.